Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Film Fan Club Show. I'm Sam Carrico, and I hope you guys had a good Cinco de Mayo weekend. I hear it hit Hollywood pretty hard. Kathleen Kennedy must have gotten so drunk that she greenlit a Rey Skywalker movie. You mean she did that sober? Something very sobering, though, is the writers' strike currently going on in Hollywood. Yeah, the Writers Guild of America, that's their union, they're demanding fair wages, residuals on streaming shows, and a stop to the use of AI to write scripts. I guess that explains The Mandalorian. One immediate impact of the strike you may have noticed is that late night shows have gone dark. Most late night shows anyway. Not us, not the Film Fan Club Show. No, the only person on strike around here is my girlfriend, who says I'm not getting laid again until I quit doing this silly show. Now, honestly though, I live in Oklahoma, and as a right-to-work state, we don't really see unions much. They're not really a thing here. So when I heard of one fighting back against big business, I thought that's a story that sounds so unreal it must be from Hollywood. But digging into it, I found things are way worse than I realized. Writers say they're overworked, underpaid, forced to meet ridiculous quotas before impossible deadlines. Artists in the CGI department heard that and said, "Wow, that must be terrible." But when it comes down to it, the writers aren't asking for much, though. They don't want much. They just want a fraction of what James Gunn's wife makes on any number of Nepo roles. Oh yeah, I saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3 over the weekend. I even went to a Thursday night premiere screening, and here's a look at the rest of the audience. No, but the real thing wasn't much different. There were less people in that auditorium Thursday night than in my Tinder queue. I was gonna ask why, but we all know the answer. Marvel hasn't made a good movie since Spider-Man, and that was made by Sony. Remember those opening night premieres? Every big Marvel release since then has seen diminishing returns, so this was the logical conclusion. It's almost like people knew this movie would be disappointing, so why bother? And it was disappointing too. This has all the pieces of a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, but they don't seem to mesh as well here as before. Part of that is by design. This is, I think, intentionally darker than the previous two, and it's an interesting choice to have the dark middle chapter of your trilogy take place at the end. But the movie still tries to be funny, and I don't think it really is able to balance those tonal shifts very well at all. Actually, they're about as jarring as me trying to speed things up on the third date. So you want to come back to my place for a drink? In a matter of minutes, they'll go from characters joking around, laughing, having me laughing, and then to those same characters nearly dying and having me so worried I look whiter than James Gunn's hair. Part of my investment in this movie was its focus on Rocket Raccoon. I never thought that I'd be so invested in a character that's just a CGI raccoon, but I guess it becomes easier when you consider the alternative is Chris Pratt. But I don't regret seeing the movie. I'm glad I saw it in theaters, and I'm glad that James Gunn got to end things the way he wanted to. I mean, he tweeted about ending these movies this way long time ago. I mean, for more on that, just Google search James Gunn old tweets. Okay, we've got a great show for you lined up. Let's get into our discussion of Guardians of the Galaxy, and for that, we're going to go to the author of the young adult spy thriller series, The Gems, Doug Solter. Let's get right to it. Doug, welcome to the show. How's it going, man?
It's going great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being here.
It's great to talk to you. I've been doing this for a while, and you and I have known each other for a while. So I've always had in the back of my mind, I want to get Doug on at some point. So I'm glad that we could do it for Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes.
You heard my monologue, or the gist of it anyway.
Yes.
I want to know what you think in reaction to my monologue, and if you agree or not.
For the most part, yes, I agree. I think of the three films, Guardians of the Galaxy films, this is the weaker of the three, and I agree with you. Some of the tonal shifts are real. James Gunn sort of popped the clutch a few times when doing the transitions from, like you say, the tender moment parts and then the action parts. It's kind of jarring in a lot of scenes. But yeah, overall, I agree with you. It's a good ending to the series, and like you said, I'm glad James Gunn was able to write and direct the third one and present it, like you said, present it the way he wanted to end it. He might have been sloppy in doing that, but then again, it still feels like a James Gunn movie with the music and all that. So it's still, I enjoyed watching it. I really enjoyed, we'll probably get into more detailed about the Rocket Raccoon Yeah, he likes being saying raccoon now. Rocket's backstory, which I actually like that he used that as the main story thread through this particular movie, which that's on the positive ends of this film.
Going off
Right.
of that, a couple things I want to mention. That you said
Yeah.
this feels like a good ending. I do feel like it does, but in the Rocket Raccoon aspect, it seems like this was
Yes.
a Rocket Raccoon story like from the time he wrote it back in 2017. But
Yes.
then after he got the job at DC, he kind of had like a pencils down moment, where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm having fun. I'm writing these Guardians of the Galaxy movies, as long as they'll have me. And then
Right.
suddenly it's like, oh crap, I got another job offer. All right, never mind. This is the end, because the ending, and we'll get into spoilers a little bit. The ending felt very rushed. But let's pick up on the Rocket Raccoon stuff. I loved Rocket Raccoon's storyline.
Yeah.
And again, this is a very uneven film. So there's going to be times where I'm
Yes.
like, I loved this, but then there's going to be other times where I'm like, I hated this. And that's what's so
Yes.
frustrating, because Rocket Raccoon's storyline is so strong. It's done
Yes.
mostly through flashbacks, and they introduce characters, like new characters, in a third installment of the trilogy is always a little tough to nail, but I thought they did it really well. Like, I liked the otter a lot. That bunny was probably my standout favorite character.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
and then the way it complements the main story, I thought that was, in a story, in a script way, very seamless. But again,
Yes.
it didn't lend itself. I think that particularly is what didn't really lend itself to these tonal shifts, especially
Well,
as we kind of. Well,
yeah,
yeah. Let's just start on that. How do you feel
sure.
about that?
Well, that's a good point you make. It seems like he had the storyline with the Rocket Raccoon. He thought that's my main storyline for the third movie. But like you said, he probably came back to it at some time, some period, and go, oh wait, I need to end all this other stuff. And it does. The rest of the movie does seem like he's throwing together all the other loose ends that he needs to tie up. But then, even in that sense, he kind of fails in a lot of ways of trying to give us some of those character moments to tie some things off. But there's a lot of stuff he didn't tie off, and yeah, it's kind of a mess in that part of the movie. Like I said, the Rocket Raccoon, the best part of the movie in that storyline, and like you said, the rest of it is just sort of a hodgepodge mess that you just, being it's James Gunn, you just sort of go with it because I love the music in it and everything. But then when you're really, really thinking about it afterwards, you're like, yeah, I kind of wish there was some characters he kind of, would have finality to them. Like, for instance, like, didn't Drax and Mathis sort of have a
It seemed
thing
like they kind of had a little bit of a
going?
thing. There's a lot of storylines like
That
that,
was left on
pairings.
the floor. Yeah, that was kind
Exactly.
of left on the floor.
They
So
do that a lot. They do that, and you're kind of touching on your. I'm chomping at the bit to talk about more plot details. So
yeah,
broadly
yeah,
speaking, just going based back to the trailer. The trailer, I think, promises a very different movie. It promises. I was talking about this earlier. Have you seen that? This is such a random point,
sure.
and you may not have seen it, but have you seen The Vow with Channing Tatum and Rachel McAdams?
No,
One of the
no.
characters in that movie, they're a couple. One of the characters in that movie loses their memory, so then they have
Hmm.
to fall back in love again for the first time, and of course they do, because
Okay,
it's
I
a
think I saw
romantic
the
comedy.
trailer to that, but
It
yeah.
was bad, but as a younger person at the time, I think it came out like 2010 or something, so I was like 15. As a younger 15-year-old who liked romantic movies, I thought it was a fun time at the theater, no alcohol required. But uh, but
Right.
but this, and I thought the trailer kind of promised that, but Guardians of the Galaxy, with the Gamora storyline, with the Chris Pratt storyline. And that
Yes.
seemed to be the worst example of James Gunn telling the
Yes.
story he wants to, but
Yes.
within the confines of this larger, like, it's like Bob Iger and Kevin Feige were like, sorry, we did this in Infinity War, so you just kind of have to square this circle now. And he didn't. I was very dissatisfied with how he squared that. How do you feel?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the relationship with Gamora and and
Peter Quill.
Peter Quill. Thank you. It just seems like, and they sort of tried to touch on a little bit. Do you remember me at all? Peter would tell her, and because no, that Gamora is sort of dead in a sense, that she doesn't exist. Which I'm trying to remember, because yeah, you have all the Infinity War stuff that messed with all that, and
Yeah.
so I'm trying to remember how this Gamora is different, But I've kind of looked at how other people have viewed this, and it's like Gamora. she wouldn't have. It wouldn't be as, you know, their relationship would be a little closer, but different, but a little closer. They would, like, the movie kind of lost in the sense of they didn't kind of connect, try at least try to connect
Right.
with each other.
Yeah.
Maybe they'd have the problems because of what all happened in Infinity War, but there wasn't really, there was a sort of a pseudo attempt at it, but it just, again, Drax and Mantis is again kind of left on the floor. It was explored a little bit more than Mantis and Drax, but kind of, again, it was left on the floor again. And I kind of wish James Gunn sort of kind of at least tied that up a little bit more. And her going with the Ravengers,
Sly Stallone's group.
Yeah, Sly Stallone's group, her kind of being with that, there was a lot of questions about why would she kind of join that group,
right,
in a way, and some of those story decisions didn't make some sense, but that's how James wanted it, I guess.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing. I'm like, James wanted it this way. He really wanted them to be like, he wanted them to be miles apart in terms of how their characters are now. But this is Gamora from the very beginning of the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie. And and they fell in love in the first Guardians of the Galaxy over the course of that movie. And this, of course, because time has passed since then, so she's had like a couple years of a different life now. So it would have been very interesting to explore. They still have the connection, but he is kind of falling in love with a different person, but there's still that connection there, and there's different things that make the relationship different and interesting.
And they're the two main characters of the series, really.
Right.
So yeah, exactly.
I bet if they had done a fourth film, that would have gotten a proper resolution. I really bet it would have. But it's so unfortunate that we're not going to get that, because like you said, these are and I love the Rocket Raccoon storyline. I really love the Rocket Raccoon storyline. I'm glad we got it. It would have been better if they had just maybe done both of them somehow. And it's like, James is, I don't want to tell somebody how to write their, but like, as a person working in a big Hollywood infrastructure, you do kind of have to work within the confines of what other creators have done. So for him to just be like, well, I'm just not going to touch the Gamora storyline anymore because you ruined it for me, I'm like, well, that's disappointing. You kind of have to do something like that.
He didn't see that as a challenge as a writer. How can I write what I want to happen into, with the confines I'm given? How can I write myself to somewhere where I'm happy to leave those characters in a certain place? And I mean, the Rocky Raccoon story is a main story, but that Gamora, but Gamora and Star-Lord. Thank you.
I love how forgettable he is to you.
Oh, sir. Star-Lord, thank you. Are together. He could have easily done that main plot, and their plot is a very strong secondary plot, and go between the two. And then, it would have been easy to do. I don't know. He could have done it. I don't know.
I'm not going to say it would have been easy.
Lost opportunity. It's a lost opportunity.
I'm not going to say it would have been easy, but you're right. He should have risen to the challenge. And this seems to be a pattern for James Gunn when it comes to dealing with the larger issues of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A couple of examples off the top of my head. Somebody asked, how would you ever have planned to incorporate Thor into the movie? And he said, I just wasn't going to. I would have, because like Thor was with them at the end of Endgame, and he's like, and James Gunn said, well, I'm glad Taika Waititi dealt with that, because I just was going to have Thor not be there. And I'm like, well, you have to acknowledge these things. And another thing is, they asked when the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special takes place. Good. I like that, by the way. It's so wild how that's better than this. But he asked when the holiday special takes place. He's like, I don't know. To me, it's 2022. And I'm like, well, in the universe, this is me being a huge nerd, but like in the universe of the Avengers, it's like 2025 or something, because of their version of the pandemic, which was the blip. And it's funny how they were able to get around the pandemic by doing the blip.
That's funny.
So anyways, as you can see, I think that James kind of senioritis, pencils down syndrome, whatever you want to call it, a little bit like, all right, I've got a good script here. He had it, like I said, he had this draft done in 2017, but bringing it home was the struggle. But we're going to go into spoilers a little bit. I want to touch on all the broader things that we can before people drop out when we get into spoilers. Villain, what'd you think of Chudwuki Iwuji?
I thought he was a good villain, to be honest. It's a little different than some other, the traditional Marvel, villain. But I think it worked, especially with Rocket's story. I thought it worked really good. The only disappointment in that storyline, I would think, is I don't know if Rocket got his proper not comeuppance, but Rocket didn't have that moment with that person that, who tortured him basically,
Yeah,
and all his friends. It seemed like he didn't get that moment where he gets his revenge,
that
for
face to
lack of a
face.
better word.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's he was kind of really disappointing to me. Like it was too quick, and he wasn't really the person who. If I remember, we'll get into spoilers, but
Yeah.
anyway,
You think it could have
yeah,
been resolved a little bit better in terms of tying it
yes,
closer to Rocket?
yes, exactly.
I think there was some cool body horror stuff they did with him. I like his stretched face. I like when we get to why he has a stretched face in present day, but not in the
Yes,
black flashbacks. I think that's cool. He's also
yes,
like a character that's trying to create the perfect being, so it's interesting that he literally took his own
yes,
face and like it looks like put it onto like a cyborg or whatever.
exactly.
That was really it's a really cool character design, and I like that
Yes,
character as a villain. I believe he was in Peacemaker before, and he was
yes.
kind of a anti-heroish character. Like I thought he was going to be a villain, but he wasn't quite a villain in Peacemaker. So it's nice to see him just go full bad guy in this one.
Yeah, he's a
And
great actor. A great
yeah,
actor.
he plays it well. And the action scenes, I'm trying to think just broadly. Oh, I guess another thing I'll say, because I have a big thing to say about an action scene in the middle of the film that's a spoiler, though. So, music could have meshed a little bit better. Like, I think what I like in it that is so charming about the first one is the through line of where all the soundtrack's music is coming from. And
Yes,
that
yes.
does get lost, even though the second and third movies have great soundtracks. This is a problem with the second film, too, is that they lose their thematic resonance whenever now we're just doing a jukebox musical. It's a little bit of a spoiler, but at the end of the movie they play a song from the 21st century, and I'm like, this does not belong in this movie at all.
Yeah, that was interesting choice. Like you said, the whole basis for the music thing, especially music in the whole series, is it's from his mom. It's from what his mom listened to. And that was, 80s, 90s, well, I guess 80s basically, 70s, 80s.
Yeah,
And there's not enough music in those 2 decades. Come on now, that you could just kind of keep that theme going. But again, like you had mentioned, maybe James was just like, I'm going to just start putting music in I just like,
yeah, yeah.
and kind of get off the theme a little bit, because I don't want to, keep it to the 70s and 80s. I want to, whatever. But anyway, yeah, I totally agree with you. It seemed like the music was starting to just, well, here's another song, here's another song, here's
Yeah,
another song, and you're
yeah.
like, okay, sometimes I know it's a Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Sometimes silence and regular sound in some places is okay. Give us
Yeah.
kind of a break, or use pieces of song like you were saying that have more meaning to the characters or more meaning to the plot and stuff. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that.
I've been watching a lot of the Best Picture winners from recent years that I've missed, or and throughout my lifetime that I've missed. I've never seen no. I am ashamed to say, before this year, I'd never seen No Country for Old Men before,
Oh
and
yeah,
and and that's a very stark example. But like sometimes when you don't have a soundtrack and you just let silence, build. I'm thinking of that scene with
oh
Javier
yeah,
Bardem and the gas station clerk. When you don't have any soundtrack, you're there in the moment because you don't have any of these artificial, like I say, artificial film is all whatever, but you're more there because there's no sound, because life doesn't have a soundtrack sometimes. So
sometimes
letting the tension build sometimes can be really without music can be really helpful. And this
yeah,
movie starts to feel, I hate to say it, don't want to say it, feels a little bit like the 2016 Guardians of the Galaxy movie, where they just, or sorry, the 2016 Suicide Squad movie, where they tried to imitate the first Guardians by just shoving music everywhere. And it's like the
yes,
music was very relentless. And I think Cruella did the same thing, that 2021 Cruella movie, where the music was relentless.
yes, yeah.
Anyway, so is there anything, would you recommend this film before we jump into spoilers? I will go beat by beat in the film, but for the people that haven't seen it yet, would you say they should go see it or wait for Disney Plus?
Oh, it depends. I mean, if you're a big Guardians of the Galaxy fan of the first two movies, how could you not want to see the third one in a theater, right? But if you're sort of a casual, I want to see it, but I, you know, yeah, I would say you'd have to see it in the theater if you're a big fan. I think just
Yeah.
you know. I
It's
think.
not like 2019 anymore, where the average person, I think, went and saw Endgame opening night and to be part of the conversation about
Oh
this
yeah.
larger conversation we're all having about the big movie of the day. That's not really Marvel anymore. So this is another one of those where
You,
it's like,
you you
yeah,
could wait for the matinee. If you can get a cheap matinee afternoon, that's fine.
yeah.
Or you like I just saw it in a regular theater. I could have done the 3D XLL, digital theater thing, but I just saw it in the regular theater. You're good. You'll still enjoy it in
Yeah.
that. So yeah.
I got to echo what you say. It's got enough there, made me laugh a lot. It's got the good soundtrack. I like the Rocket storyline, but as far as James Gunn's last chapter in the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy and a peek into what his future tenure at DC will be like, I was very worried. I'm very worried. So I did enjoy the 3D. I happened to go and see it in
Oh,
3D because that was the only showing available. It was like 11:15 when I went, which again, you would think 11:15 on a Thursday night would be packed, but the 3D showing that I went to was not packed, so that was what was available.
oh,
But I was pleasantly surprised by the 3D because I always go into 3D showings expecting to hate it. Um, let's jump into spoilers, shall we? This
sure.
movie starts with a very weird. It starts in a very weird way because it starts with a soft acoustic version of Creep that I like, but not really like I guess it sets the tone for the film or half of the tone for the film because it's very disjointed. But then Adam Warlock shows up and basically puts Rocket in a coma, and that starts our movie. How did you feel about just the brutality of seeing our heroes just nearly beat to death?
It was an interesting choice in the sense of uh getting right into the film and changing the shift or changing the tone of it, because usually Guardians films kind of don't. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember on number two how it started, but it
Number
didn't
two
it,
started, actually, that's a great comparison. Number two started with
yeah,
this giant monster. It's the tentacle monster that you see three of them later in the movie, and they're
right.
all it's Baby Groot dancing, and very
That's
wildly
right.
different.
Right. The rocket, that one you're saying on the it sets the tone in this darker kind of, but then again, for Rocket's story, he has, his backstory is one of the darkest of all the characters, really, and we don't know that. So starting that off with that, I think is fine in the sense that it just like, oh wow, like we're really finally going to discover what Rocket went through, and just all of a sudden you're just like, wow, he- he's one of your favorite characters, but then you emphasize, get with him so much in the film. Anyway, I like it. I like how they started
So you
that. I
liked the
really do.
opening song a lot, and the peek it gave, or you liked that peek into the thematic resonance with Rocket's story, anyways.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
And
yeah.
then tying into the next thing of just seeing all our heroes nearly beat to death, Rocket gets put in a coma. How did you feel about that? Because just to echo my thoughts, I thought I was very taken by surprise.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, he just went ahead and Rockets out, and that's it. And yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was too.
The middle section of the film was another part that I hate to be such a Debbie Downer. I think the organic planet should have been cut in favor of more Gamora Star Lord stuff. I didn't want to say that
Yes.
earlier because of
Yes.
spoilers, but the organic planet, yeah,
Yes, it was just the whole concept, just from a science fiction point of view, is just, a planet with skin, or talking about the prison or the
the planet has skin. I can't. It's all. I don't think the prison. It's where it's Jennifer Holland is there. Daniela
That's right.
Melancourt from Suicide Squad. They're all there.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, and it's
They
treated
had to
like a
cut through
big.
the skin,
Yeah,
and
Nathan Fillion.
yeah,
It's all treated like a
right.
joke. Yeah.
Right, it is. It's a huge joke, and it's hard to even take all that, even from a science fiction standpoint. It's hard to take any of that seriously with the skin, planet skin, and all. It's like, with hair and everything,
Yeah.
and bleeding and whatnot, and then Nathan Fillion comes on, which I like Nathan Fillion. I love Firefly, but it's just he sort of takes me out of the movie when he shows up. I like him, but he's like one of those cameos that sort of
Mm.
takes you a little bit, and just those crazy uniforms they're wearing.
Yeah.
I've heard it described as the Michelin Man, kind of. How am I supposed to take them kind of seriously as security guard?
Well, you're
Anyway,
not. You're
you're
not,
not
and
right, right,
but it's
right.
in service to a storyline that's very serious. And I think that's a
Yeah,
great
yeah,
example of the tonal. What are we doing here? kind of thing.
Exactly.
Also, Jennifer Holland cameo, didn't like it because why are you giving your wife so many roles? Could have gone to an actual actress.
Good point.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And then the Counter Earth, I think, was a fun concept. I think the Counter Earth stuff was a good finale. I don't really.
Yes.
Briefly, I don't have much more to say about Counter Earth, and while we're running out of time, I want to mention all the flashbacks altogether. I guess the
Yeah.
ending to the flashbacks, them building up these characters over the course of the movie, I thought was really effective. And then having them die, and then having
Yeah.
Bradley Cooper's voice acting, and I don't know if it was a mocap performance as well, but it was so good that I was struck by how invested I was in that character. So that's definitely one of the highlights of the film.
Yeah. I'd say the Rocket storyline and the flashbacks definitely. I really yes. I
Scratching up
agree
the
with you on
guy's
that.
face as well, and that's the
Oh
explanation.
yeah, that was great, and that scene was great. It was it was good. It
It
was
was
good.
very powerful, I thought. So I hate to be such a Debbie Downer, but I just think maybe I'm holding this on such a weighted scale that I'm maybe because I also was like I thought Shazam was gonna suck, and I walked out of that movie being like, okay, it was fine. But with this movie, I was like, wow, trailer looks great. James Gunn, is a very skilled director. Loved
Yeah.
his Suicide Squad movie. Loved the first Guardians of the Galaxy. Liked the
Mm.
second one.
Yeah.
So disappointment, but I maybe have to take a look at myself and say maybe I'm being unfair. Do you think we're being unfair, Doug? I guess
No,
that'll be
no,
the
no,
last
no, no,
question.
no. I don't think so. Of the three, it is the weakest of the three, and James Gunn. Like we discussed before, there are things he could have done to close it all out better, but it is what it is. It reminds me more of like his Peacemaker show on
Yeah,
HBO,
yeah.
where it's that's the way James Gunn is. Fun, action, fun. You had fun, and I had fun story wise. A lot of things that I, like we discussed, didn't like, but overall it was okay. And to be honest, it was a better Marvel movie than, say, a lot of the stuff that's been out, probably since my favorite since Spider-Man No Way
I
Home,
would
at
say so
least.
too. Yeah.
I mean, I'd rather take a weak James Gunn movie, Marvel movie, than the other Marvel movies I've
Oh,
got in between.
yeah. I
So
caught
I'm
a
not complaining in that
yeah.
sense. So yeah,
That's a great point. And just jumping off of that, I caught a trailer. I hadn't seen the trailer for the Marvels before I saw this, and I was like, boy, that's gonna be a slog to get through.
yes.
That's like the definition. I did not laugh once during that trailer. That was so bad. So yeah, I guess no matter what, yeah, I'll take a bad James Gunn movie over the best Captain Marvel movie any day. So Doug Solter, it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Let people know where they can find you and keep up to date with your work and find your books.
Well, thanks for having me, Sam. You can go to my website, www.dougsolter.com, and it's got all my books there. So if anything looks good to anybody, you know, buy it.
We always want to
Yeah.
support independent creators here on the Film Fan Club show. So I'm
Thank
glad
you
we
very
could have
much.
you on, and it's been a pleasure. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Definitely. It's good to see you. Thank you, Sam. Appreciate it.